This podcast serves and she's joining me today as personally, not speaking on behalf of Sarah Pack, is Rebecca Mansour. You all know her from the Twitter. You know, of course, in the coverage of Governor Palin's Inner Circle, she is there as well. And all of us who have an interest in this nation getting better, and especially within the support of that particular woman who will make things better, I've asked Rebecca to join me now to address some of the most astounding accusations and lies in this regard, and also to get her sense of what's been happening here. Rebecca Mansour is on the line now. Rebecca, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Tammy. I'm really happy to be here, but it's just an awful, awful day. I'm so just sorry to see this. It's just so terrible, and I'm sorry to have to even be having to address these sort of weird, politicizing of this tragedy, because it's so disgusting. Even politicize a tragedy.
It is. I mean, I, as you know, as Mike, having come from the left, I do know that the degree of the problems there, and yet even after, I had some after September 11th, Americans came together. That lasted for a few weeks, but here we weren't even sure of whether or not Representative Giffords, this is a young woman who we may disagree with politically. She's a blue dog. It didn't even occur to most people to put this in a political context. And the governor had very quickly an appropriate brief statement on Facebook, sending condolences to everyone, praying for everyone. For you watching this unfold, there have been a number of just bizarre accusations. The very first one coming out of the left in the first hour was the fact that somehow this was Governor Palin's fault. And I'm not quite sure. What was your assessment of those accusations when they started to pour out?
I don't understand how anybody can be held responsible for somebody who's completely mentally unstable like this. It's just where I come from, the person that is actually shooting is the one that's culpable. And we had nothing whatsoever to do with this. And from what we do know about the shooter, from what's being reported right now, it seems that the people that knew him said that he was left-wing and very liberal. But that is not to say that I'm blaming the left for him either.
Yeah. I
think when you look at this man's YouTube video, he is clearly mentally unstable. I mean, I don't want to play armchair psychologist here, but it sounds to me like paranoid schizophrenia.
Well, and anyone who can walk up to people, Rebecca Mansour, anyone who walks up to people, including a 9-year-old girl, and shoots them, to try to cast that within any kind of framework of the normal American scene, politically or otherwise, to use that, even the death of a little girl, to try to score political points is obscene. And this is, this was going on all over the left. And you're right. I mean, it's not hard to say anybody who's going to commit mass murder is, and it's not to make them a victim. Look, I mean, there are crazy people out there. And yet, ranging from the taking the 20 states back and the surveyor symbols that were used at that website, because that election's over now. I believe that the PAC, the Sarah PAC, again, you're here, Rebecca Mansour, as an individual personally, not on behalf of Sarah PAC. That site is down. Weren't there some accusations that the governor was washing her sites, or the paranoia was astounding to me?
Yeah, look. When here's the timeline for it. I'll just be completely honest. I believe the person that controls our website, that our contractor that runs our sarahpack.com and all that, they were the ones that hosted that our Take Back the 20. We had thought that Take Back the 20 was taken down after the November election because it's irrelevant now.
Right.
And they called us this morning and said, "Do you want us to take this thing down?" Because they realized instantly, And I think with just reflectively, without even thinking about any consequences, our PAC treasurer said, "Well, it should have been down already. Why is it still up? We're not paying for that, and it's not getting any traffic.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer relevant." So it was taken down. It was not trying to scrub anything. The original Facebook post where we had this graphic is still up. And I just want to clarify again, maybe it wasn't done on the record enough by us when this graphic came out. The graphic is just, it's basic. We never, ever intended it to be gun sites. It was simply crosshairs like you'd see on maps.
Well, it's a surveyor symbol. Rebecca.
A surveyor symbol.
Yeah.
And no, but I just want to say this, Tammy, if I can.
Please.
This graphic was done. It was done not even in house. We had a professional who does a political graphics artist, consultant do this for us. So we saw it really quickly. We said, yeah, that's fine, that's great. And we had never even imagined or occurred to us that anybody would interpret it as violent, because it's not. And you know what? Targeting congressional swing districts, targeting swing races, this is part of our democratic process. Everybody does this. And it is the way that the process is supposed to work. What's not supposed to happen in our democratic system is for lone, crazy gunmen to commit mass murder like this, like we saw today. That's not supposed to happen.
It's not. And here's the thing that I think Americans are responding to, and this is another good example of it, is that here you are, the governor and many other activists and politicians are, including Tea Party activists, using the brilliance of our system as set by our founding fathers. And we literally have, there's an entire section of groups of people that I think in large part they know that what they're saying is also not true. And we saw this on Twitter. You saw this sweep for the first hour of accusations and finger pointing. And then when it became apparent that this guy, as should be apparent to everyone in this kind of a situation, was just simply a nutcase, suddenly the left goes silent. And they know, and yet it really is, Rebecca Mansour, in my humble point of view, and many listening, one of the reasons why, we have this dialogue and we want to have, these offices change and we want to have these elections because of the attitude and the mentality that is moved through here that really poisons the entire framework. My God, it seemed like there was no other better example of why we do what we do as independents and as Tea Party patriots to try to change this when you have something as basic. Here you are explaining a graphic when, in fact, this guy, according to the people that knew him, was exhibiting real serious problems years ago. We will not be able to solve any of our problems as long as even the lamestream media was joining in on this, thinking it's the political dialogue in the country and it's the Tea Party movement. I mean, how are we going to solve any problems as long as this kind of bizarre, sick accusation dynamic is going on? Not that you have an answer to that, but or if we've lost her. Rebecca. Oh, all right, yeah. We lost her. And she is trying to call back, and we'll get her. Not that she needed to hear that rant of mine, but let me get her back here on the Twitter. I'm going to say call back. And here we go. All right. And I do believe we've got Rebecca back here. Not that you needed to hear that entire rant of mine right there, Rebecca. But
no, you know what? I'm so sorry. My phone just got cut off. I'm getting inundated with requests for media and all of that.
I bet.
But Tammy, I know we're on the same page. This is just wrong to do this sort of thing. And I got to say, what's really sad to me is this. These sorts of things are just absolute tragedies, and you don't politicize them.
Right.
You don't take advantage of them. And I have personal experience with this sort of tragedy because when I was a little girl, my father was the assistant dean of the business school at the University of Detroit. He was a math professor. And one Friday in July, while the campus was empty, and he was just coming out of some classes and leaving for the day, he was held up by two gunmen who were clearly drug addicts at the time. And he was shot at point-blank range 4 times, and he was left to die. I mean, it's a miracle that he survived, and it was truly a miracle. And my father, the first words that he said to us when he was in the hospital and they were wheeling him in, the first words he said to my mother is forgive. That was the first thing, because he was a devout, Catholic, and he believed in his Christian beliefs was that you forgive as you've been forgiven. And the second thing that he said is do not bash the university, because he loved that university. The university it was his life. He spent his life there. And he wanted to make sure that nobody would politicize this or accuse anybody of lax security or try to make this any sort of a racial thing either, because that was really a concern at that time. And he was like, this was not anything about that. And the first thing he said to us is those men were obviously suffering because they were drug addicts and they didn't know what they were doing. And he forgave them. And that to me has always been the example to me in my life about how you handle tragedies and about how you behave like a Christian. And also about just how you don't politicize or take advantage of something that is a tragedy, where somebody who is clearly mentally unstable acts violently.
All right, now I need to ask you, Rebecca, on your personal opinion, because, the Paleanistas are hearing these attacks on the governor handling it very much as you've described, very appropriately, and a simple statement on Facebook, and yet these finger pointings go on. What is your advice for the Paleanistas, supporters of the governor, and others who see this going on and want to respond, or they don't know what to do? What can you tell people who are watching this go down right now, if they're Paleanistas and others who are concerned?
I think first off, we shouldn't. We should just tell people to behave like adults and not jump to conclusions. And I honestly, it would be bad if anybody from the right or the left jumped in and assumed political motivation, because from what I've seen, just as this young man's YouTube, he is clearly mentally unstable.
Yeah.
And, when he's saying that his favorite books are everything from, the Communist Manifesto to, I think he had one, Ayn Rand book in there. And this is somebody who... I have no idea what his political motivation is.
It's like some kind of a Nazi Randian communist. It just... Yeah. He's a nutcase. That's all.
Exactly. You know what? And let's just point this out. Nobody really... I never went out and blamed Al Gore for the guy that was trying to shoot up, or any environmentalist for the crazy, insane person that was trying to shoot up the Discovery Channel that one day. That you can't do that. These are people who are mentally unstable. And you can't read into this like this, and it's just offensive. People that are going to try to exploit this and read into it.
I do think the left kind of speaks for itself when it came to what they were doing, and the bottom line is, and I think that this is what the governor inspires and what her team inspires, which is a reasonable, steady point of view on what is best. It is the Christians involved. It is certainly because the governor is a woman of faith. And I do think that, obviously, when you're on the right track and you're doing things for the right reasons, ultimately that speaks for itself. So for the Paleanistas, clearly, Governor Palin is going to be fine. I also do hope, though, I have to tell you, Rebecca Mansour, you have the ear of the governor. And while I am surprised this doesn't happen more often. Everyone's saying, this is going to affect how Congress interacts with constituents. Look, we're a big country, over 300 million people, and this really doesn't happen that often. It is a testament to the American commitment to the process. And yet I would hope that people like the governor and others, it doesn't hurt to have a little bit more security about you. And I'm sure that not only does Governor Palin, but everyone who's in the public eye thinks about that a little bit. Is that something that you're concerned about, or does that not occur to you at this point?
Right now at this point, I'm just sad for the families. Right now, the thing that's going through my mind is that there's a 9-year-old little girl who's dead. And that's just a horrible tragedy. There's a federal judge that's dead. There's others that are dead. Families are really suffering right now because of this. This is just a gross tragedy, and that's really all I've gotten my mind around right now, to tell you the truth. In the coming days, we'll have this discussion about security for lawmakers and all of that. Mm-hmm. And but at the end of the day, lawmakers are they're supposed to interact with their constituents. There's really nothing you can do to stop crazed gunmen. I mean, there's when it comes to situations like this, sadly in our country, politicians, presidents have been targets for assassination. It's a sad part of our history. I mean, going back to Abraham Lincoln.
But I'll reassert, and Rebecca, well put. But I'll say it is still rare. I mean, we still are, and you hear this wave of discussion. While we still don't even really know, thank goodness the prognosis, at least for survival, is good for Congresswoman Giffords. The kind of survival, we don't know what that is yet. But there's a lot of stuff coming out of Washington and the media, and I think that probably the best advice really is just to stay steady, trust in our own sensibility of what's happening here, and to not let others affect how we feel about this process or what we're doing, or to let others feel, like Tea Party patriots or conservatives or anyone else, to not allow that to devolve into finger pointing when it should be about powerful prayer at this stage.
That's true, exactly. We're all looking at our Twitter feed, and I'm seeing people, and it's really sad. People actually accuse Governor Palin of this. It's appalling.
It's insane. It's just obscene.
It's appalling. I have no way. I cannot even express how disgusting that is.
Well, we learn about people, don't we? Rebecca Mansour, we learn every day. We learn about people, and more than anything else, we learn about ourselves in how we handle certain dynamics. And it is. It's for the people of Arizona, clearly, and we know, of course, Bristol has moved into that state. The people of Arizona have been dealing with so much violence in general. It's been a very difficult time, and it's heartbreaking for all of us.
It really is, and I'm going to resist the temptation. I'm going to try to resist the temptation of getting anything more than just disgusted with the people who are going to politicize this and accuse, Governor Palin of something, because it's reprehensible. And, the fact of the matter is, we cannot ban the word, targeted swing districts or things like that from the English language. We did nothing wrong here.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, it is one of the strengths and weaknesses of conservatives is to be sensitive and to kind of take other people seriously sometimes. What are we going to do? We're going to ban it is one of the most ridiculous dynamics of hysteria when there's only one thing here that's happened. A crazy guy mass murdered a bunch of people, including dead now is a judge who was appointed by George W. Bush. I mean, this is about a crazy guy murdering a bunch of people, and for the opportunism here by other sick people. If anything, it again is an opportunity to learn about other individuals. And I've gotten a lot of messages, by the way, Rebecca Mansour, from liberals who also have been shocked by the reaction out of the left. And I've told them, and for the liberals listening to this public podcast, instead of telling me you're shocked with the behavior of the Huffington Post or other liberals and individual liberals and Krugman at the New York Times, let them know. Tell Krugman and the dynamic of what's going on at the New York Times and at Fox and at CNN and over at the left-wing blogs. Don't tell conservatives you're shocked. Tell your liberal friends you're shocked.
Yeah, there you go. You know what? I think we're going to find out more about this disturbed, killer in the coming days. And I think what will probably emerge is that this is not somebody that was taking any cues from the Tea Party. This is going to be any more than, John Hinckley was taking cues from, the left when he shot
or Jodie
Reagan.
Foster. If we're going to be doing this, let's blame Jodie Foster for Reagan's shooting.
No. You know what actually would a clear comparison is let's blame the filmmakers of Taxi Driver. Let's blame Scorsese for making a film about a taxi driver that inspired Hinckley.
Yeah, great.
I mean,
yeah,
you can't do that. You can't do that. And I don't like that saying this book encouraged somebody to kill or this or that. If the person does this thing, they are morally culpable on their own. Movies, one movie doesn't, make you do that. It's, these are people that are morally culpable on their own. I mean, sure, we all believe in being responsible, but there was nothing irresponsible about our graphic when we were encouraging people to vote, a certain way in a swing district.
No, it's absurd. Yeah. And I think that ultimately, and Rebecca, I can't thank you enough because, I was getting, as you're getting swamped. Palenistas are getting deluged. And look, we've got to get used to this in some certain sense. But right now, the messages are, of course, to stay steady. Prayer is the issue of the day as people continue to struggle at the hospital in Tucson. To remember the difference between right and wrong and to not let people who want to use this opportunistically and in an obscene way to score political points wherever they come from, Twitter, Washington, anywhere else, is for us to stay steady. And I want to thank you, Rebecca, and certainly Governor Palin for remaining examples and Governor Palin's team of what is right and remaining steady and reminding people of the Christian decent response to this, and that's what America needs, especially now more than ever.
Yes, thank you, Tammy. I really appreciate you having me on, and let's just keep the families in our prayers.
Indeed. Rebecca Mansour, thank you very much for joining me today. You can, as many of you do, follow her on Twitter at RAMANSOUR, and I'll tweet that this is up and running as a public podcast.